Huh? Buddhist tradition. And they are talking about unity and diversity. Okay. We still can. Right. You all want me to sit here and as a traditional monk and give a very traditional Dharma talk, or you prefer me to share with you some information and understand? Wow, yes. So let's have it a very relaxing type of talk, but the main purpose is to understand. Well, the life is well understood when we understood the Dharma. Life is well spent when we practice the Dharma. Life is well utilized when we realize the Dharma. Human life is very precious, and the purpose of this precious human life should be nothing other than perfection. Perfection is the enlightenment. So every single precious moment we should use to develop ourselves to become enlightened human beings. So that is the purpose of practicing Buddhism. So each and every one of you gather here today, and each and every one of you have got the potential to become enlightened. Birds of a feather flock together. Equal-minded people, like-minded people, they get together. And when those people who like the Dharma, when they get together, and it's always a happy congregation. Why it is so? Buddhism from the right beginning to the end, it talks about happiness. How to be perfectly happy. So perfect happiness is another term for Nibbana or enlightenment. Even though it is so, today we can see many forms of Buddhism, various Buddhist traditions. We have Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Nichiren Buddhism, Pure Land Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and there are many more. But each and every of these traditions, they claim that they teach the original teachings of the Buddha, and they are coming from the original, the Buddha himself. But even though they say it, we can see a lot of differences between these various traditions. The way of doing rites and rituals, devotional practices, chanting, as well as their doctrinal differences and practical differences, all these can be seen very clearly. So today we gather here to understand the various Buddhist traditions. And it is impossible for me to give you a deep understanding of each and every tradition. But what I am going to do here, to have some understanding how these traditions came into existence, and even though we have got various Buddhist traditions today, but still we have the unity, and unity in diversity. Even though we have got different traditions, we are still focusing the same directions, and we are all moving together to the same directions, the directions of enlightenment. Like all the lotus flowers turn towards the sun, looking for the sun rays. Like all the sunflowers are turning towards the sun. Each and every Buddhist, no matter what the traditions are belonging, each and every one, we are focusing and targeting nothing other than the perfect enlightenment. So it's very important for all of us to understand the differences between the traditions as well as the unity and our common goal. Well, Buddhism can be divided into two major sections or categories. One we can label as early Buddhism. The other one we can label as sectarian Buddhism. When we say early Buddhism, we are referring to Buddhism that the monks and nuns, they enjoy the perfect unity. And there was only one group of monks and nuns. When we say sectarian Buddhism, we are talking about when the monks divided themselves into different groups and started their own traditions and schools, then we call that period sectarian Buddhism. Okay? Buddha, he himself did not call this teaching as Buddhism, as we call today, but he simply used the word Dharma Vinaya. Dharma here means doctrine, Vinaya here means practice. Other terms, understanding and practice. Doctrinal aspect and practical aspect. Very simple, straightforward. Buddhism has nothing to do with the superstitious belief. It's a very practical religion, and it is for us to train our thoughts, train our speech, train our physical actions, and finally to achieve the enlightenment. So it's very scientific, logical, and reasoning. But then how can there be various kind of devotional practices and various colorful practices, traditional aspects here, and how these came into existence? Around 100 years after passing of the Buddha, a group of monks, they wanted to change certain training precepts, Vinaya rules. And they changed 10 training rules according to their own will. They started to practice this. These group of monks were known as Vajjiputtaka monks because they are coming from the Vajji country. So they are known as Vajjiputtaka. Well, the other monks came to know about it and they said, what you all are practicing is wrong. It is against the original Vinaya. To settle the matter, they called for a council, a meeting. 700 enlightened monks were gathered, and this was brought to the council. And over there they decided, well, what these monks are practicing is against the teachings of the Buddha, so we cannot approve it. What happened? Everybody agreed and settled. Even though it is settled superficially, the other group of monks who were practicing these 10 training rules according to their convenience, after 10 years they gathered together and organized another great council. And here, when they organized this great council, they brought 5 statements against the enlightened monks. Like enlightened monks, they are still having greed, still having hatred, delusion, so on and so forth. So there was a council after the second council, around 10 years later. And in this council, the monks divided into 2 groups. Those monks who said, no, we do not have to change any Vinaya precept given by the Buddha, these monks were the Orthodox monks, traditional monks. And they were given a label Staviravada. Stavira here means Sanskrit term for Thera. Stavira here means elder. Vada here means version. So this school was labeled as version of elders. The group that came off from these the Orthodox monks, and they were known as Mahasangiti. Mahasangika. Mahasangika means great community. And they held the council, and that council was known as Mahasangiti, a great council. So that was the first division of the monks. So 2 traditions came. One was known as Istaviravada, the other one was known as Mahasangika. That happened around 100 years ago. The reason for this is because they could not come to agreement of training rules. So disagreement of the training precepts led the division of the first schism. Well, around another 100 years later, around 200 years later after passing of the Buddha, and there was another problem. Now this problem based on the doctrinal aspects. What happened? A group of monks, they were developing the Abhidharma, the scholastic proliferation of the Dharma. The monks wanted to systematize the Dharma in a very precise way, very logical and reasoning way, and compile it to a book. And later on, this became popular as Abhidharma, deep doctrine. But there were various groups of monks who were developing this Abhidharma, and they could not agree with each other. So there were many fundamental differences between this Abhidharma group among the monks. Because of these divisions and differences, they divided into groups. So between around 2 to 300 years after passing of the Buddha, we come across 18 schools, 18 schools. All these are traditions. But all these traditions then slowly they died off. Later on, some more traditions came into existence in schools. Mahayana school came into existence around the 1st century CE. And still no one knows how Mahayana teaching was originated. Earlier scholars were accepting, in fact, Mahayana was originated from lay disciples who are inspired by stupa worshipping, or pagoda worshipping. And Mahayana, in fact, developed the devotional side as well as the doctrinal side. But still, the scholars, they have not come to the conclusion how Mahayana originated. But one thing is assured, Mahayana did not come from the sky, but it's originated from the original teaching. So Mahayana teaching is still based on the original teachings of the Buddha, and they later on developed and introduced various sutras and various the concepts, but it's still within the teachings of the Buddha. Around 6th to 7th century, then we come across Vajrayana. What happened in India? There were popular religious concepts came into prominent in 6th, 7th centuries, like mantra, tantra, yantra, kalachakrayana, sahajana, various kind of religious beliefs and practices, especially rites and rituals and devotional practices. They were very, very popular among the people. So these popular aspects were embraced by Mahayana teachings, Mahayana Buddhism. And later on, another division came out, branch off, and they were known as Vajrayana. So Vajrayana teachings then spread into Tibet and mixed with one religion and came out as Tibetan Buddhism. So in this way, various traditions came into existence throughout the history of Buddhism. Hundreds of schools came into existence, and today among all these schools, we recognize 3 major schools: Theravada school, Mahayana school, and the Vajrayana school. When it comes to the essence, the most primary teachings of the Buddha, all these 3 traditions agree with it and still preserve these teachings. So no matter what traditions you are belonging, as long as you learn the original teachings of the Buddha and practice it, and you will realize this noble teaching.